Franz, how are you, old chap?
Oh, I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. Pouring myself a little bit of WHISTLEPIG over here. Thought we'd have a classy show today.
Already poured. Yeah, very classy. I don't know what it was, but I felt like putting on a bow tie today and maybe doing
I have
something
my
a little
sweater
different.
wrapped around my shoulders. It's a fall day.
Perfect.
We're heading into the weekend. Why not class it up? Where's Chaps anyway, by the way?
I don't know. He sent the link. He should be here.
Probably wants to do some kind of Halloween thing, but it's just not that vibe today.
Can you guys not hear me knocking at the door?
No.
Oh, I'm hitting my microphone. Let me the fuck in. I want to come inside.
All right.
Oh,
well,
come
on in.
Oh, you guys are having a grown-ups drinking WHISTLEPIG kind of vibe, and I thought we were going to have a Babadook kind of vibe.
I'm speechless here. I'm not really sure
Oh
how
my
to
God.
proceed because
Is that a full Babadook costume, Chaps?
Yeah, this is going to be an embarrassing little moment that we're going to have here. But that's fine. We'll just do the show this way. I'll have more of a Babadook vibe. You guys have more of a grown-up drinking whiskey vibe. I have some whiskey, too. It's presented by our good friends at WHISTLEPIG. If you want to try the best bourbon in the biz, go ahead and get some. They got 100% rye, 100% bourbon. It's 100% delicious. You can drink it on Halloween. You can drink it on Thanksgiving, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, all kinds of days. Whatever your day is, it should end with a little bit of WHISTLEPIG by going to shop.whistlepig.com or going to a local store and picking you up some of the good stuff. It's Babadook approved. All right, so today we're having
You really went full Babadook.
oh man,
How do I look though? On a scale of 1 to 10 as a Babadook, pretty good, right?
You
you
look
got
like
the Babadook
if,
vibe down.
You got the Babadook vibe down. You look like if you were a Babadook in the band Kiss.
Okay, that's fair. I had to do all the makeup myself. I even got little makeup sponges and all that stuff. I'll tell you who didn't like this. Little baby Del Woohoo was
boy.
not a fan at all. I came in because I had to spray paint this brown hat. Walmart was picked over on their little top hats. I had to get a brown one and spray paint it. So I had to go all out this morning. I walked in after doing that with all this stuff on, and baby Dale was like, he was so. I was like, "Woo, it's Daddy," and he was like, "Oh, okay."
Truly
So
is
it's
a
fine.
Babadook vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have a spooky episode here, Kate. There's gonna be some things that we're gonna talk about. What are we not gonna talk about?
First of all, we're not talking about anything spooky like the Spooks, a group of highly trained technicians that conduct intel operations in absolute secrecy. This term was coined probably back in the 60s for these technicians. 50s. These technicians that basically, you ever have those guys or girls on your camp who you only see like maybe 1 hour a week and you're like, what do they do here? Where are they coming
Cryptologists,
from?
that's exactly what they are. They're trying to figure stuff out. Did you know when I worked at the dog school, the cryptology school was right there, and they also had a bunch of cryptology shit going on? Those people were in a secured area, inside a secured area with like 50 feet barbed wire fences and shit that nobody could get into because there was some secret squirrel stuff going on.
Yeah,
there.
you really,
Those folks
they stick together.
are what they call spooks.
Yeah, they're called spooks. They stick together. You only really see them at chow or when they hit the racks, but some of them even sleep at the job, so you like really never see them because they're so ghost-like. They call them spooks.
That's exactly right.
Also,
We're also not going to be talking about this plane called the Goblin. It was America's first pint-sized plane. It had 450 caliber weapons attached to it, some Browning machine guns, and it got dropped from a B something. I forget what the name of that
B-36.
B something plane.
Yeah.
B-36, it was designed to be an in-air aircraft carrier. So this plane would drop the little plane out of it. There'd be a pilot inside the little plane. That plane could go about 450 miles an hour, and it would have a nuclear payload. And whenever it got done, they essentially just put cargo nets down from the belly of the plane, and this Goblin plane flew straight into the cargo nets, and that's how it went back up.
It's adorable.
Not about that. We're not talking goblins.
No, that sounded like this, by the way. Ooh, it was the cutest little plane you ever did see. We're not talking about ghosts either, like the Ghost Army of World War II. We've talked about them on here before. They were combat con artists who used giant inflatable tanks and built fake outposts and fake towns to trick the Germans so that the Germans were essentially shooting at ghosts. They weren't shooting at real
Nope.
people at all. So no.
It's not going to be about that either. We're not going to be doing that.
No.
We are going to have an actual spooky episode. So today we only have really one round in the magazine, kind of two, but really one. Round number one. I thought the show was going to be more of a Babadook vibe, but it turns out it's grown-ups drinking wine kind of vibe. And Kate has some of the best military costumes ready to go. What do we got, Kate?
Okay. Top 5. I'm doing a top 5. Best military costumes and then top 5 scariest feelings in the military to kick things off. I remember Halloween was always a big deal when I was in. Like, you'd find the hottest Halloween party out in town. First, you'd start pre-gaming in the barracks. You're all out in your costumes in the smoke pit. Like, we went all out for Halloween, and it was always a really fun time. Did you guys? Do officers do such a thing?
Did you have any cons?
No, not like with our units. I just went out in Austin and was a young officer out there roaming the streets, just doing a thing on Halloween like most adults. And I think it's kind of weird when you see other people in your unit, not only in civilian clothes, but then if you go one step further and see them in a Halloween costume, that's a very weird vibe. So
You're allowed to say that you're trying to get a business from a sexy little bumblebee, Cons. Don't be so
Yeah.
prudish. We know you're out
Sheesh,
there.
getting a little
Officers
honey.
have sex too. You're allowed to go out there and get a sexy little nursemaid or a sexy little milker of a cow
No.
or a sexy little butterfly farmer. You're allowed to do all kinds of stuff.
I do not objectify women in that way on Halloween.
No, it's not objecting if they do it.
Oh, all right.
Their body, their choice.
Anyway, number 5, sexy drill instructor.
Ah,
Especially for the simps that like getting yelled at, whether it's a man, woman, whatever. If you're a drill instructor, but you're just a little sexier, you have the hat, the drill instructor hat, but nothing else on.
On that note, imagine how much that would make on OnlyFans.
Oh, a sexy drill instructor? If you
Yeah.
were a drill
Oh, yeah,
instructor
where you
who could...
come in, you're like, you know what? Everybody go ahead and drop blouses.
Yeah, go drop blouse, get down on all fours. Yeah, oh, buddy.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be my angle. I kind of let mine go by the wayside.
Start doing monkey fuckers, you piece of shit.
wait, hold
Sexy
on. Can we
World
get an
War-
update on that? Sorry, really quickly. How's that going for you?
My OnlyFans, I haven't checked it because I got too anxious. I never posted nudes, and then I said I'm too anxious to check this thing, so I don't know.
You still getting paid?
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
Nice.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just keep it going forever. It's like KFC Radio Premium.
I think it's people who
Golly.
feel bad for me. The number has dropped significantly, but I'm still getting like $1,000 a month from guys
Listen,
I
there
think
you go.
who
Catherine,
forgot.
That is $1,000 a month that you didn't have before. So
Buddy,
I mean,
I'm not
payment
mad
and
about
half.
it.
yeah.
But I almost feel bad. I almost want to email them and be like, remember, you accidentally have this like on
No.
auto tune.
No, don't do that.
But I think
Because
it's
guess
people
what?
who feel bad
They,
for
they
me.
can get True Blue and figure that shit out.
Yeah,
True.
or
That's right.
get Rocket Money, and they can figure that out on their own. But guess what? Let them be, because who knows? You might come back in a month, 2 weeks.
All right, what
Who
other
knows?
sexy costumes do we got,
Sexy
Kate?
World War II pinup model. I feel like you can't go wrong with that. A sexy leather zaddy MP. Military
Okay.
police uniform.
See, that would be fun, right? Because the military a lot of times takes itself way too seriously.
Yes, I'd like to see
If
them.
the MPs were allowed to dress up, how much fun would that be?
Picture them at the gates as MPs,
Wait.
but they've also got those leather straps around their bodies. You know what I mean? Those like leather zaddy straps. They
Oh, that could come in as like MP on motorcycles.
they gently brush your car with the leather whip as you go by. You know, just
yeah.
you know they're
Give
kind
it a little extra to the officers' wives.
yeah, a little something something. Number 2, sexy tortellini MRE package. Those picture you're just wearing like a big burlap sack essentially, but halfway through the party you tear it open, and what's
And then I
inside?
walk up, and I'm like, I don't know about you, but I want you to lay down against a rock or something.
Yep, exactly.
Rockin' bones,
You might get
folks.
leaned up against a rock in a costume like
Yeah.
that, is what I'm saying, okay?
Exactly right.
There's some protein powder in there and a little hot sauce bottle. I'm just saying, have people dig around for what they want in there. And then finally, number 1, a sexy DD-214. I feel like on any military base, you imprint a DD-214 on a bikini or a speedo. Isn't that the thing everyone wants the most in the military?
Yeah, or a libo chit, yeah.
Yep, a sexy libo chit, a sexy DD-214, a sexy shave, no shave chit. People are gonna want you bad.
What about a bikini bottom with a no-shave chit, just to let everybody know you're rocking a bush?
I mean, I most certainly am. I saw this story the other day about a pile of tumbleweeds that blocked some lady's house, And the first thing I thought of when I saw the huge pile of tumbleweeds out front was, I gotta shave soon.
Well, that's what I do.
Sheesh.
I don't know if I've said it on this show before, but I have a Remington razor that I use that is like cordless.
Mm-hmm.
I take it behind my pool house when I need to clean up, shave there, because I think it's sort of like recycling. There's all kinds of squirrels that are in my backyard. What if these squirrels take my pubes and make a nest? Right? Like that. There's all kinds of robins and cardinals that they could just go in right by the pool pump, pick up this huge stack of pubes and fucking make a nest.
Top 5 scariest feelings
it's
in the
wonderful.
military. Top 5 scariest feelings in the military.
Right.
Do you, both of you, remember a time when you were the most scared? When
Let's move on from the squirrel
when your
pube thing.
butthole was the most puckered it's ever been? Chaps, maybe when you got shot. I don't know.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Number 5, being surrounded
Yeah,
by
that
the
was
enemy.
pretty scary. Yeah.
Number 5, being surrounded by the enemy / ambush. It's got to be a scary feeling.
So I guess I got numb to it, but the first few times I was out on my outpost and it was like right on the border there with Iran, that was pretty scary because, you know, we had heard reports of things happening at the border and people coming over the border. So when you lay your head down at night and not wonder, is somebody going to come try to screw with us tonight? That was
They
kind of
might see a juicy little officer run around with a wagon and say, I'm going to kidnap that guy. I mean, you could have been
Yep.
kidnapped
the
over there.
only other time, because almost every mission I did when I was deployed was with 1st Recon Battalion. I went out on one mission prior to that before my friend Dustin Lee was killed. We had to go out with 3rd of the 509th. It was a reservist unit, I believe, and I was like an attachment there, and I was just a part of one squad that was led by a 2nd lieutenant, and I believe it was a corporal that was in charge for the Army. They left me. I was doing a sweep, and they were like a good 400 or 500 meters ahead of the house that I had just came out of because we were doing cordon knocks. And I looked around, I didn't see anybody, and I was like, oh my
fuck.
fucking God.
Yeah.
And so I got on the radio, and they were like, oh, yeah, we're just around the corner. We thought that you could catch up. I was like,
What?
catch up? Like,
What?
you know where we are?
Yeah,
Like,
maybe
catch up.
don't do that ever again. Thanks.
Yeah, so I went back, and I was a tattletale, big time. My staff sergeant, her name was Elena Ybarra, and I went up to her. I was like, they fucking left me, Staff Sergeant. I was out there, and I was like going. Like,
You were
I
like
had
those kids
probably
in
drank 4 or
Jurassic
5
Park.
Rippets.
He left
Yeah.
us. He left us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had 4 or 5 rippets, so my brain was about to pop out of my skull anyways, and I was like, and they fucking left me. And I was there, like, on the radio. I thought I was having to do man left behind drills. Like, I was, like, legitimately thinking, where are the culverts at night? Do I have my chem lights that I could break open? I was scared as fuck. And it was only 2 minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't know where they were at.
Okay,
That's
so
all
I'm
it
gonna
takes,
bump. I'm gonna bump that. That's number 6 is getting left, but you're realizing you're
Okay.
alone in country. 5, being surrounded by the enemy. Number 4, scarier than all those things, is realizing you slept in. Waking up on a Tuesday morning when you were supposed to be PT at 05, you look at the time, it's 06:15, and you know there's about to be a pounding on your door, unlike you'd ever heard before. And if you're me, you've already been.
Unlike whenever you're dressed as a sexy DD-214, that's a different kind of
Oh,
pounding,
that's
folks.
true. That's true.
Cons, when you got out, when you were done, did you used to have nightmares that you showed up to work in uniform unshaved? Mm-hmm. Like
Yes.
whenever you first started growing it out?
Absolutely.
I was so scared. Like I was out for like 6 months, and I would constantly have this dream. I would feel my face and be like, oh my God. And I would wake up in camis with like half a beard, and like people would be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, meanwhile, no one cares, even a little bit.
No one cares.
No one cares at all.
Number 3, that feeling of, oh fuck, where's my rifle? That
that was
is
bad.
a very bad feeling. I know several people who have actually lost. I had a buddy, I wasn't with him, but I guess there was a movie theater on his base in Iraq. Or like some kind, not a movie theater, but like a pull down area where you could go
No,
watch
no,
a
no.
movie.
Like
with
a
him.
fuck,
Yeah,
And
they had those.
an MWR where they had a big screen.
And he got back to his can and was like, oh fuck, where's my M9? And he had lost it. And then
That also happened to Colin Powell, so he's
yeah,
fine.
that's fine. We had another guy get all the way back from the range somehow amongst all of us and realize he did not have his rifle with him. And it was like, how the fuck did that happen? But whoever does it, that's a terrible feeling. Number 2, almost getting stuck outside during the extra long Friday version of Colors. When you just barely make it, that's a tough feeling because you're going to be standing.
Did you guys know in Okinawa they have it that plays on the radio station there?
Yeah.
And they play on every single AFN channel at the same time. There's like 3. And when that happens, even on the radio, you're supposed to stop your car and get out and look for some kind of colors that you can stand at attention to.
Yeah.
Just absolutely ridiculous.
And then finally, number 1 scariest feeling in the military, knowingly taking a shortcut across the grass right outside your battalion headquarters. Your eyes are darting around.
You left a big one off, though, Kate.
What?
Having diarrhea in formation before a long battalion run.
Oh, yeah, that too, because there's no getting out of it. You're just going to have to diarrhea down your legs, and you're going to be in trouble for a long time. So if you have a different top 5 of either of those, let us know. But those are my top 5 lists of the week. It was a little spooky, scary.
And we do have some spooky stories from around the military and around the military world.
But wait, I also want to say, too, I feel like at the top of the show we should have introduced this, that it's coming. I interviewed Tales from the Gridsquare, this fella, Nick, who's an active duty soldier stationed in Hawaii. And he has over 60,000 followers on his Instagram where he lets you anonymously tell him your ghost stories from the fleet. And because it's anonymous, because people are afraid of looking crazy, so he's given them a place where, like, I won't judge. You send me your stories. I'll vet them. I'll do a little research and I'll repost them. And so he's got stories at Tales from the Gridsquare across the post. So he tells me some of the spookiest, scariest stories that he's got, like the Fort Polk box witch, if you've never heard of that. A couple other famous, there's a ghost on Fort Campbell that we'll hear about, but some really good ghost stories. The Giant of Kandahar. Somebody has from an actual troop who has seen it. So really interesting. Just wanted to give that a heads up that that's coming before we get into the episode.
And we've got some of our own that will take place before that. Because the military is old. Like, any base that you go to, there's going to be old shit. Like, the old kind of adage about the military is that around military bases, you're going to have tattoo shops, barber shops, and strip clubs. But on base, you have a ton of old buildings. When I was a kid, I lived at Pax River, Maryland, and behind our house was this huge warehouse, and it was just packed full of, like, furnaces and things like that that really heated base housing. But to a kid, seeing this all old brick building that was completely boarded up, you never saw anyone go in, you never saw anyone go out. It was kind of like Willy Wonka's Playhouse, but there was steam that come out all the time, and you would hear those crazy loud furnace noise, like
It's kind of like
different times.
it's like a souped up version of Home Alone, him being scared of the basement.
Right, exactly. And so when you're a kid, that kind of shit is scary as hell.
Yeah.
And I was 8 years old, and walking by that at night, like when the streetlights first come on, hearing that go on, I was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
And some of my dad's friends would be like, oh, yeah, people know that place is haunted, man. It's a haunt. You better be careful. So anytime I was going by that place at night, I was a skinny little kid, and I would be sprinting as fast as I could right by that warehouse so I didn't get snatched up by the Babadook.
Oh, yeah. We had at the bottom of our neighborhood, it wasn't military, but we called it Wiggleworm Farm. And our neighborhood was kind of in the boot. And it was this long dirt driveway. We had like a suburban-ass, basic bitch suburban neighborhood. But then at the very bottom, there was the one row at the edge of our neighborhood that was in the woods. And this long dirt road went to this old, abandoned, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre-looking barn, kind of. And the thing was, could you run up the driveway and run through the barn and back out? Which really could get you shot, turns out. So maybe you should do that. Yeah. But that was like the big thing you had to do when you were walking the neighborhood with the kids. So,
And there was a lot of Okinawa ghost stories and things like that, but we found some online. And the first one is the USS Hornet. They have some ghostly inhabitants, right, Kate?
Yeah, the USS Hornet and her crew served in World War II and the Vietnam War, got tons of awards for service and operations, and was also the prime recovery ship for Apollo 11 and 12 missions. During her active years, about 300 crew members died from accidents and suicides. Visitors to the ship's permanent location in San Francisco report hearing voices and seeing apparitions of soldiers. Electronic equipment is also known to go haywire on board, but that could just be Navy financing. You know what I mean? That could just be typical. Now, the host of Ghost Tours, the USS Hornet holds the title of the most haunted ship in America.
Cons, your school was super old. Was there any West Point haunted stories?
Oh, goodness gracious.
There's gotta be. They probably do ghost tours up there. I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, I would imagine. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's so old. I would imagine the old buildings, there's got to be ghost stories.
Yeah, keep it moving, because I can't remember off the top of my head, but I definitely know there are some.
It's crazy to think,
right,
too,
Yeah, there's definitely... No. I lived in the barracks freshman year where it was said that there's, like, an old cadet, because he died while he was a cadet, that, like, haunted the Scott barracks there. That's definitely one of them. I'll try to think of some more, for sure. Keep going.
It's crazy to think, too, like, you go to Gettysburg, and there's Gettysburg Battlefield ghost tours, and blah, 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 blah. And it's hard to think back then, if you could talk to those soldiers now, or, then in the smoke pit, they'd be like, they're doing what now? Huh?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like,
They're doing ghost...
What's the statute of limitations on that, where somebody dies, and then you could kind of make fun of it and say it's a ghost?
Some chubby little kid eating an ice cream cone is going to be walking around here. Yeah. What's the statute of limitations on that? I feel like 100. It's got to be like 100.
Oh no, I think once your child is 40, like if you have a chance to have a kid who's 40, you can make fun of somebody for being a ghost.
Yeah. U.S. Army garrison Fort Leavenworth, widely considered one of the most haunted places in America. Residents and visitors claim there's a bunch of different goats and ghosts wandering the buildings and the grounds. General George Armstrong Custer. He didn't die there, but he is said to roam the general's quarters there.
And this is really the only spooky story that's not historical and things like that. I love this story. Let's go through this one from Fort Leavenworth.
Yeah, so when a family moved to the Rookery at 14 Sumner Place last February, this was 2008, they knew it was an unusual house. At first, things began to disappear. A woman named Anne was moving in with her 4 boys when she thought she misplaced her cell phone. Then the remote control to their digital video recorder was gone. Then the family's wireless phone disappeared. Again, I just have one toddler. I'd say at this point it's just the kids. I haven't seen my remote in 3 weeks. On a Friday...
Or you just forgot, because I forget everything. Like, I'll go upstairs and be like, I don't know why I'm here.
On a Friday night, the family went out to eat, and Lieutenant Colonel Carlos Moafa remembers looking through his wife's purse. The next morning, the cell phone, remote, and telephone were all stacked neatly in her purse. One night, Anne noticed the light had been left on in the basement after she told her son to turn it off. They went down a second time to turn it off, but it was on again. Whatever presence was in her house didn't seem to mind people, but doesn't seem to appreciate the Muafa Oz family pets, especially the cats. The family has noticed their pets being let outside when no one is in the house. When their small cat Lucy tried to sleep on the bed one night, they heard loud banging for hours. Once, Anne noticed her large cat, Missy, at the top of the stairs, not moving, as though she were being held down by something. The cat's hair stood on end, except for one spot on the back about the size of a hand. Anne said they weren't sure what to believe at first. They came up with excuses like the furnace. Again, second Home Alone reference to the show. That was Jurassic Park before Home Alone. The furnace in the basement was evil. Wind blowing against the house, a foundation settling. They were just trying to figure it was anything but a ghost, because you feel like a nut when you think that. Around Memorial Day, Anne was cleaning the house to get ready for visiting relatives. She had received notice from Frontier Heritage Communities that maintenance workers would be coming. She opened the door that led downstairs to the furnace room to grab cleaning supplies, and a man's face appeared near the bottom of the staircase in the doorway to the furnace room.
Imagine what that face must have looked like.
Yeah. Assuming I'm picturing yours right now. It was a Babadook.
Yeah.
Assuming he was part of the maintenance crew, Anne said, "Oh, hey," grabbed her cleaning supplies and closed the door. The man smiled at her. The next day, the real maintenance crew showed up. They hadn't been there. Wasn't anyone matching Anne's description. A pointy face, mustache, and salt and pepper hair. Anne was worried that one of the tourists interested in the Rookery had come unannounced, or that someone had broken in. It wasn't until she was looking through Fort Leavenworth, Gateway to the West, a book by Patrick Hughes, that she realized the man she saw may have been a ghost, because she recognized a photo in the book immediately. Major Edmund Ogden, quartermaster of Fort Leavenworth in the mid-1800s.
And I went and looked up this guy, because if they mention this guy by name, that must be a fucking crazy story behind it. And I found the story behind it. It said several of the soldiers who once stood guard at that same house reported seeing a ghostly sentry who would occasionally appear and challenge the confused guard who was standing his post. The threatening spirit was said to have a bullet hole in his head, running red with blood. And he was said to be so frightening that several guards allegedly threw down their guns, deserted their post after encountering him. One of it had a certain soldier who was frightened that he not only left his post one night, but he also left the army entirely. According to the story, the sentry was a guard who had been killed years before when a raiding party attempted to steal munition from the powder magazine. He was said to have believed to have confronted his living counterparts because they were trespassers at his home.
Ooh. Isn't it? Wouldn't you love that though? I do love the idea of a military ghost being like, fuck it, I'll just haunt the guys for the rest of my time.
Yeah,
I'll just haunt the
absolutely.
guard posts that fuck with the MPs for a while. I love that.
Now, Cons, I know you're looking for a house to buy.
Yes.
I wouldn't recommend at your stage of your life where you're at, because you're going to start having babies and start having kids and all that. Don't get a haunted house. Don't.
That's a good piece of advice. Here is the hardest thing for that, though, is that Alex loves the idea of older houses that have been renovated. So it's just ripe for ghosts. So I don't know.
But when your kids turn 18, that's when you put the family home on the market and look for a haunted house. Because once your kids are gone, I imagine it's going to be super boring and you're going to want other people to talk to.
Fair. I get that.
All right, Kate, let's go into your interview that you did with people who actually know a lot about spooky shit. Here it is.
And now on Zero Blog 30, things are about to get even spookier. We are joined by active duty soldier Nick, who's joining us all the way from Hawaii. He runs the most haunted account in all of the military universe at Tales from the Gridsquare on Instagram. I had to try that several times. I kept saying Gridsquare. So now I'm glad I got that right. Tales from the Gridsquare. It's over 60,000 followers that you have. You've been on multiple other podcasts to tell some of these scary stories. You have a book, Tales from the Gridsquare Volume 1, an online store with patches and stickers, my favorite being a ghost carrying a moonbeam with red light on it. But Nick, thank you so much for joining the show.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Kate, on the Zero Blog podcast. I'm excited to be here. I know I've been a follower on my super secret personal account for a while.
Oh yeah, slinking around like a ghost over there, keeping it low key. So how in the heck did all this start? Were you just a believer who started sharing, in the paranormal, who just started sharing your own experiences and then it blew up? Like, what's the whole story behind Tales from the Gridsquare?
Well, you see, in 2016, there was this gorilla. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace. The ghost lives on.
I'm sorry, I had to say it. I've always had kind of like an interest in the paranormal, and I've been in the military about 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had like always interest in kind of paranormal fringe stuff, like everything from Sasquatch and cryptids to ghosts to I had a book about like unsolved ciphers that I was determined to like figure out as a kid. It just interested me so much. Fast forward into my Army career, like all good things, this idea transpired over some alcohol in the middle of the night. And I just like randomly created this page, and I woke up in the morning and I was just like, okay, like what am I going to do with this now?
Yeah.
And so I kind of jumped ahead to backtrack. This all started in 2019. There's some like in Instagram, there's all these Instagram pages that are associated with like different military MOSs and niches. And there were two pages that were doing, who now run both those pages also now run the podcast that talk paranormal and crime, Department of the Dead. I occasionally, when I have time, to jump on there too. But they now
like
run
that DOD, Department of the Dead.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what the Pentagon changes their sign to at Halloween. It's a really cute. All right.
Oh yeah. Now you see the inspiration.
That probably wouldn't go over well if they did that. But anyway,
probably
right.
not.
Okay.
But so during COVID, like they were doing like during the lockdown and everything like that, they were doing every like Tuesday or Thursday, they would kind of like collect in DMs and repost screenshots of DMs that they were getting of ghost stories. And it was actually pretty surprising like how many that they got, and like on kind of like some really kind of creepy stuff. Some of the stories I think are still creepier than what I've gotten today. Some of those original ones, which I have on my page and they have on theirs. But so fast forward, I went to JRTC, which anyone in the Army who's familiar knows, the dreaded JRTC. And when I was there, I had some pretty kind of weird experiences. And And I'll be honest, like my experiences are not like super crazy, like, oh my God. Like to be honest, they're kind of like a little on the goofy side, mundane, but basically like I
Like,
had
where
stuff.
was this?
So this was like in the box of Fort Polk, so in the scenario area.
Okay.
And so the first time I saw, no, sorry, I didn't see. I've had stuff thrown at me,
Mhm.
like pine cones and stuff like that. And long story short, I didn't think anything of it at first until one of them like nailed me in the face. As this is like 3 a.m, and I
Yeah.
instinctively I didn't think anything paranormal. I thought I was about to get dragged out of my tent by Geronimo the Outfour, and so
Yeah.
I sat there terrified as these pine cones kept hitting my tent.
Yeah, like, did I
Um,
sleep in? Am I supposed to be on duty right now? What the fuck? Yeah,
yeah,
middle of the night, you're delirious. Yeah.
and well, this was like I came back actually from a meeting,
Yeah.
and like Army loves his meetings, and like I'm sitting there in my little light fighter tent with my MVGs poking out of a hole, like trying to see like where these pine cones are coming from, other than I could just see them coming from the darkness. But in reality, I thought I was going to get dragged by the Outfour.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, I kind of asked about it, and the OCTs there kind of confirmed that the Op4 wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
and like it was kind of an irrelevant fact to bring up for like security briefing. But what was funny was everyone that night on that side of the seawire where they were sleeping had the same thing happen to them. So why it doesn't, I know it doesn't sound really incredible, but like why it connects is I talked to other people that were there in the same location, and they started seeing, they told me that they saw things, they heard things that basically, I don't want to say like Bigfoot, but it sounds suspiciously like a Bigfoot story. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. And other things like while I was there, I saw orbs. Like, you hear people talk about orbs and stuff like that.
Yeah, like in photos, you take a still photo and there's like a light that wasn't visible at all when you took the photo, and you develop it and there's this big orb of light. Okay.
And like, so when I was there, I actually saw like what people like consider an orb. And it was like, I was sitting there in a field of like pulling security in a field of like fireflies.
Mm-hmm.
And like 200 meters out into this clearing up at Peason Ridge, there's like some there's at a farm, and I've also learned apparently this farm is like haunted.
I was gonna say, like, did these experiences make you then go back at whenever you got done in the field or whatever and look up like the history of Fort Polk? What is this land on? What happened here before?
Oh yeah, so we'll come full circle with that.
Yeah,
it gets real interesting. But like I was there and I saw like these orbs, and I'm look people like, oh, they're just fireflies, and I'm like, dude, I'm looking at the fireflies in front of me, and they're like this like orangish light, like fireflies, greenish orange light, and I'm like, dude, I'm looking at red and blue light like weaving in and out of the trees, and it's not a drone because I hear the drones they have there and they don't make any noise and they're not red and blue. And I just sat there and watched these lights move through the trees before they like went into the wood line and vanished like out of my sight. Like I didn't even see them disappear. Yeah. So then, so I come back and I talk to some of my friends who were there who had the same experience, and I started like looking into it on Instagram because there's an Instagram page for every little thing. And so I found out that Fort Polk, among the soldiers there and everything, kind of has this like collective urban legend that's known as like the box witch. And so like it's kind of, it can go one of two ways. So the box witch is either a legitimate ghost, like a singular ghost of a witch that lived in the training area long ago before the U.S. Army bought the land out, and she like refused to leave and kind of like lived as a vagabond inside the training area, and now she curses it. And so like the story goes, like if you have a pair of items, she'll steal one of them. So if you have 2 boots, she'll steal like your left boot or your right glove. Yeah. Soldiers say like they've seen a woman like in the middle of the night in a white dress come up and like tap on their Humvees to like wake them up.
Oh God.
And it's like not a role player, they say, because she'll vanish right in front of you. Or like I had this one story sent to me about how they're on a live fire range, and guys are like shooting mortars and whatever, and all of a sudden this woman runs across the live fire range as like the mortars are going off, and they cease fire and they clear the range, and they go out there to try to find this woman, and they can't find her. And then as they resume, she does it again, and it's like the same description, a woman in a white dress. So there's that part of the legend.
Holy shit. And so like other people are corroborating this. Other people are like, yes, we've all seen this too.
Yeah. So like,
because it's so easy to be like, oh, these people are crazy, blah, blah, blah. But when more people start coming forward, my brain's like, could it be? Like, wait.
Yeah. And then the second part to Fort Polk is that there's all this other weird stuff that happens there, and it's like the box witch is like the collective term for it, and it's like everything from like weird weather occurrences, like dudes saying like chunks of ice just fall from the sky, like not like hail size, but like boulder size, or like the weird lights like I saw, cries in the middle of the night. Some of it could be attributed to like the OPT4 doing psychological stuff to them.
Yeah.
But other stuff too, like even the OPT4 kind of corroborate that like stuff like that you can consider like Sasquatch stories, Dogman stories, UFOs, all sorts of weird ghost shadow people, ghost hauntings, like if you want to consider them, call them the rake for nothing else, like the pale crawler, the crawlers, all sorts of crazy stories. And I actually looked into it, like not talk like on the internet, like on like the Sasquatch angle, and there's apparently in that area even a lot of like locals report seeing Sasquatch. I even found a story on Fort Polk housing from like the 60s and the two stories from the 60s and the 80s about how people reported a giant hairy man running around in between the houses on Fort Polk.
And again, that could be a Friday night infantry guy just going loose, or it could be the Sasquatch. It's like, enough people see it. Yeah,
no one knows.
I love too, like, I feel like the military has high potential because a lot of times we are super tired and delirious. A lot of times we are in a small group in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night. And it, like, I feel like it increases maybe your sensitivity to certain things. Maybe you have experiences that you normally wouldn't because you're in areas and situations you normally wouldn't be. And it does, like, you're like, oh, am I just tired? Or did I really see that? But then when other people start agreeing with you, you're like, holy shit, no one's going to believe us. But that's why I was, going through Tales from the Gridsquare on Instagram and seeing some of these posts had so many comments being like, oh my God, my unit saw that same thing that yours did. Holy shit. And even there's tales from Fallujah. There's tales from all sorts of different deployments. Is there one particular military ghost story that far and away kind of took off with your followers that you got the most response of people being like, holy shit, me as well. Same here. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I can definitely say this now. So like a lot of it I could also attribute. So I try to do my due diligence. And like, sometimes I get some boots at boot camp that tell me a story and I'm just like, I don't know, man, that doesn't, like, I had a one recently from Fort Lee that they tried to tell me there's a Fort Lee skinwalker or something. Well, I was stationed on Fort Lee, and what they described to me was a late night hunter trying to catch one of the ever elusive like night deer that live on Fort Lee, because I also hunt on Fort Lee and I know all the hunting areas, and the person where they were describing what they saw was in the hunting area of Fort Lee.
Like,
and
there could be some reasons for what you,
Fort Lee is still weird itself. If Fort Lee left discount, there's a huge Civil War battlefield that is like literally a part of Fort Lee. But I digress. So yeah, a story that really shocked me the most was kind of like getting a lot of like a lot of people giving me like corroborating stories. Besides the Fort Polk one, I have a lot of like in my early stories was Fort Polk, just people telling me their strange stories. I guess if it was a singular place, if I was to tie it, I thought that Fort Campbell has a really interesting like legend behind it. I don't know if you're familiar with Dogman.
No.
So,
Dogman?
Yeah, so like Dogman's a pretty recent phenomena. Tony Merkel on the Confessionals has a quick episode on it, and he has another YouTube channel called Legions of Legends where he kind of covers this. So like Dogman is basically, think of, have you seen Dog Soldiers? Yeah, so like there's something like that running around North America, like a giant werewolf looking thing, literally looks like a dog man, like a man that looks like a dog, and like walks on 2 feet, sometimes runs on all fours.
And Dog Soldiers like is a lore, like
that's like a British like story, but people watch that movie and you're like, yep, that's exactly what it looked like, maybe like more muscular.
Okay.
And so anyways, when I was at Fort Campbell, I spoke to and I wrote an article on it actually for the Lethal Minds Journal for Halloween. I had 5 soldiers on the same night, 4 soldiers on the same night, a 5th one in the same exercise, all say how they saw a giant wolf-like creature running in the forest with them. And like one of the soldiers witnessed this wolf thing drag a dude into like an irrigation ditch and run off. And I started, yeah, and so it was as I started I don't want to like say the unit on the blog, just had a like kind of like, and so not anonymous is like my anonymity, sorry, is like a big part of Tale from the Gridsquare. So I won't really like say I keep people anonymous. I cut like PII on purpose, except
So
for maybe
anyone
like,
listening, if they have a story for you, they know that you're going to keep them on the DL if that's what they,
yeah, because that's like the whole point. Because I want people to like
feel
because
free to
sometimes
say, because there's a stigma with coming forward saying, because look at all the pilots now who finally have rushed forward to be like, we saw UFOs in the sky when we were flying. Like, for the longest time, you were considered like a lunatic if you came forward with that. And now, as soon as they released all that info in the last couple of years, I feel like so many pilots and have come forward to be like, yes, this is like for real.
Yeah.
And but there's a stigma.
Like, oh yeah, there's like some stuff that I think there's some pretty freaky things. Like, I don't know. I'm a big scaredy cat, ironically. So Halloween is not my favorite holiday, and I'm actually kind of a big scaredy cat, ironically running this page. But like, yeah, people I think have some incredibly, like, we can't explain the whole world away. It's just as simple with a hand wave. Like, I think there are things in the world that are like, that we can't explain just yet. And, you know, sometimes they sound as goofy as there's a giant wolf man running around Fort Campbell. And the best part was I looked into this too. You know, like when I posted the first story, people started coming forward like, hey, I was there that night. I saw that. I saw the same thing. Everyone knows in my battalion that that the back 40 of Fort Campbell is haunted. That, you know, there's an Indian burial ground out there, and there's all this stuff that people started coming forward with. Everybody corroborating they've seen and heard this giant wolf thing like out in the freaking training area. And what's kind of interesting, kind of like tying some other lore and like Skinwalker lore and other stuff like that. And like, you know, the Rougarou is also like another native legend that, you know, wrote, or the Rougarou. I can't pronounce it. It's like one of those Cajun things, but there's also like I think a tribe. It's a tribal name for it too. Anyways, I looked it up. The Trail of Tears that not many people are familiar with, that happened under the, you know, in the past, where we pushed the, you know, the native tribes from the east, and more or less it was a genocide. It passed directly through what is considered now Fort Campbell, modern day Fort Campbell. And there used to be a fort out there. I found a whole article that corroborated it and like some other stuff. And I was like, oh, wow. So like, obviously this land is probably attached with some pretty dark energy.
Pretty horrible things that, yeah.
And so like, no wonder maybe there's like some weird stuff that happens out there. But that was one that shocked me. There's other ones too. Like people started coming forward, and I was like, yeah, there's something going on over here. Bangor, Washington is another interesting one. Like, that's where the U.S. Naval Station Kitsap in Bangor, Washington. Like, yeah. Like,
and this is now we're talking Twilight territory, like out where the werewolves and the vampires are hanging out.
Yeah. Now we're talking places that are other crazy. Like, I don't know if there's any Marine security forces or any Masters of Arms that are stationed or were stationed at Bangor. You don't got to tell me about the other stuff there, but I would love to hear about the Jawless Indian girl and all the other incredibly psycho things you guys see out there in the woods.
So you get a lot of reports from people seeing things and that's out there. Do you have one that you would consider the scariest, like the one that you read that made your skin crawl?
Oh, yes, I do. I'll bring it up right now. Now, this story you can also listen to on Tony Merkel's The Confessionals. He actually, he was able to bring this Marine, onto his podcast, and it's much better if you hear it like straight from the soldier's mouth, but I'll go ahead and read it. This is probably, so like, if you're big into internet culture like me, I remember reading this green text about, I'm not going to spoil it, but this is very similar if anyone's familiar with like stories you read on 4chan. Don't go on 4chan, people.
Like Slender Man and that kind of thing. Like, yeah,
and like, so like X is like kind of like this like place on 4chan where it's like the paranormal theme. There's a lot of like goofy, crazy people on there. But to kind of digress, when I was even doing this page, I talked to a guy who told me a story on X that I trust because I listened to it on another podcast. And I was like, dude, I remember in like, you know, when I think it was like 2016 when he posted it on X, I told him like, I remember reading your story. And it was like, that's true. And he's like, yes, that's true. And I didn't even put that many details because I even thought I would be considered too schizo on this on X, which is like, that's kind of like the meme is
Yeah.
it's for schizo posting.
Okay.
So like I'm, as you can tell, I'm big into internet history. A lot of like my internet knowledge, you know, that also kind of helps me because like I also know like kind of like the memes like Slender Man and stuff that gets passed around. Like I had someone try to pass off Slender Man as real to me in a story,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, Slender Man isn't real. It's made up
Right.
by a guy. It's great. Love it. I love the whole mythos behind it. It's
Oh
hilarious.
yeah.
Another kind of I'm sorry, I keep getting sidetracked.
No, I'm fine. That's fine by me.
But for like the listeners too, what's also interesting about Slender Man, right, is he has another character called the Rake in
Mhm.
this in the Slender Man mythos, right? So the Rake is totally fictional, completely fictional. However, there was when that came out, people started saying that they had seen the Rake, a totally fictional creature, right?
Yeah.
And they started saying that they have seen they see creatures that resemble how the Rake is designed in Slender Man, a pale, all white humanoid that with black eyes that crawls around on the ground on all fours.
Mhm.
And people all over North America have reported seeing stuff like this. Like look into it. The crawlers,
Ugh.
whether it's they call it crawlers, skinwalkers, wendigos. Like there's some places I've spoken to some guys like up in like North Dakota, South
Mhm.
Dakota area, where when you say wendigo or skinwalker,
Mhm.
you might as well just be talking about a coyote or something like that. Locals out there,
They're
like,
just so used to it. They're like, oh, there
yeah,
goes another skinwalker. Yeah.
it's a predator. It's just another predator that haunts the woods. And you know, I find that extremely fascinating that for some places, you know,
It's like
I
no big
it's a
deal.
hand wave. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, we're haunted here.
I spoke to a former soldier from like the very beginning of Afghanistan, uh, also featured on Sasquatch Chronicles.
Mhm.
You know, the gist of his stories was he went to this place in Afghanistan, and it was a village that was so far removed from technology. They didn't have running water. They didn't have electricity. You know, they thought airplanes were X's. They literally called them X's because they didn't have another word for them.
Mm-hmm.
But he went to this place that was so far removed from what our modern day technology and knowledge is that somebody made an offhand joke to the translator who translated it without thinking to the village elder about, do you guys have Yetis up here?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the village elder, and to kind of draw the story short, was like, yeah, of course we have these out here. They steal our women, they attack our women and steal our animals. They're a nuisance and a pest. They're vermin. We hate them. Like, why are we talking about this? And like how he spoke, I'm sorry, he basically described what we would consider like a Bigfoot, like there's tall hairy men that live out here. Why are we talking about this right now? But he like would talk to them. He talked about them in a way that we would talk about like raccoons. Like they were just commonplace. They were, you know, like, yeah, of course these are out here. Why are you asking this? You don't have these too?
Man, and so with no frame of reference for them to be talking about it as well.
Exactly.
The real Squatch is out there, man. He's out there. Shit.
Oh yeah. Like
have you ever
like
gone squatching? Have you ever like actually gone out looking?
I have not. I don't think I could. You know, I respect a lot of people who want to look for the answers, but
you only get so many days of leave, you know.
Yeah.
You already run this page. You don't need to go looking for Squatch.
As I've come to learn in Hawaii, 90% of the legends here are straight demonic. And I've asked, like, oh, hey, can you go show me these haunted places? And people are like, no, I will not go show you these places.
Yeah,
like,
don't want to stir up the hornet's nest or anything like that.
They're like, you don't go into the mountains at night. I'm like, I don't go into the mountains at night. Okay, got it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, fine. There was also a lot of deployment stories that people were sharing with you. Have any of those stuck out in your mind?
Oh yeah, plenty. I can bring up one right now. So I'll read this one as a frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a famous. I'll bring it up and see. I don't know. You've probably heard it, but this is one that I find super fascinating because I've had a story from the Australian Army of a gentleman in kind of like not the same area, but a similar location where he corroborated this same kind of story. And I've actually spoken to aircraft operators who are like sensor operators
Mhm.
that actually saw something that corroborates this story too. I'm probably mispronouncing
Oh.
that. Corroborates.
Eh,
Okay.
I keep calling it
So here we go.
Gridsquare. You're fine. Yeah.
Okay. No worries. All right. So here it goes. So this is from a soldier from 2008. So I
Okay.
was deployed as an Army infantry team leader with the Army in the Kunar province of Afghanistan from 2008 to 2009. One night, we set in on an observation patrol to overlook a village that we suspected IEDs were coming out of due to a successful IED recovery a few weeks prior. My lieutenant gave me a new thermal imaging system called the Recon 3, and none of us were really familiar with it, but he told me to figure out and pass along the information I can with other team leaders. Classic Army.
Yeah. Figure it
I
out. Here you
started
go. Figure it
messing.
out.
Yeah, I don't know. Figure it out. Don't read the manual. I started messing around with the Recon 3 to see its capabilities, and I was surprised at the clarity of the images and the clarity of the zoom on it. I spent most of the time messing with the different functionalities and watching the village. I started to look across the valley to see what I could see, and that led me to look along the spur that we were set in on. And we saw a very large heat, and I saw a very large heat signature at the top of one of the false peaks. I did everything I could to get a clear image of this heat signature, suspecting that it was a group of Taliban huddled together around a light as they tend to do in the mountains, when all of a sudden the heat signature stood up as one being. The trees in that area grew up to be about 10 to 12 feet tall, and this thing was at least as tall, if not more elevated, than the trees surrounding it. It started taking steps parallel to my position and was covering ground quickly with ease. Its stride was slow and relaxed, like anyone would be walking, but it moved incredibly fast. That led me to believe that this creature really was just as gigantic. It very quickly traversed the landscape, and I lost sight of it along a neighboring spur. I did not believe what I initially saw, assuming that I had imagined it, as I've never seen anything like that before in my life. So I'm familiar with the Giant of Kandahar story,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I've listened to the story, and I think it's kind of goofy,
Mhm.
because like some of the doesn't sound like someone's in the military telling it.
Right.
But then it got me thinking, like, okay, here's a guy. So then I went on. How I first started taking off was I went on Wes Grimmer Sasquatch Chronicles.
Mhm.
I was a long time listener, and Wes took a chance and had me on the show, and I'm thankful for that. Awesome, great podcast. If you guys want to listen to something, we'll definitely make you think that Bigfoot exists in North
Yeah.
America. It's pretty crazy, but
Yeah.
I digress. He confided to me that there are other soldiers who saw giants in Afghanistan, like very similar to that kind of story, saw them from like a distance.
Mhm.
And he's like, yeah, there's guys that have seen this, but even when I tried to bring them on my show, they didn't want to go on the air. They wanted to stay anonymous.
Right.
Maybe with your project, staying anonymous and how you do it through like text, maybe that like, they'll come on to you. I've had a few people come on, but I find something like that, and that like the giant thing gets like
Mhm.
real like conspiracy kind of like you go down a deep rabbit hole and start talking giants.
Yeah. It escalates. It escalates quickly.
Very
Man,
quickly.
it's all crazy, and I feel like everybody like we all have, and my rugby house when I was in college, we had a ghost named Steven who haunted the house. We weren't sure if it was the drunk rugby guy sneaking in at night to mess with us, but there was just things we couldn't explain that were always happening in the house. And I feel like a lot of people you talk to who you wouldn't expect it will come out of their shell and be like, well, I did have this thing happen this one time. So you never know. And especially when you got groups of military people out there, and we're out in the nooks and crannies where people normally aren't, So
And I get all sorts of weird stuff too. Like here's one that's not like spooky, but this one is like also hilariously weird.
yeah.
And this is from a Reaper operator who was
Mhm.
monitoring drones, a sensor operator, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
The only things I saw downrange were dudes taking a piss or a shit in the morning in the middle of the night. Never saw anything weird, but one of our dudes recorded some weird shit with a Bedouin sheep farmer and potentially a quadcopter or something. It didn't make any sense, and we still can't explain it. This happened around the first quarter of 2018 in Syria. We always saw these goat farmers in the middle of nowhere. There are always these little huts made of random materials, and they moved every few weeks. This one night, we had 0 sorties and no sensor taskings. So we started watching. We just started meandering around with the drone and started watching this farmer walking around his hut. These farmers usually had a moped or a motorcycle or a Hilux or something like that. Well, this farmer hopped on a motorcycle, but the weird thing is he started driving it right towards his goats. This dude was going pretty reasonably fast, like 36 miles per hour, according to the sensor. Then all of a sudden, he goes flying over the goats. Our weapon safety officer got about 25 seconds of this guy hovering around and flying in the air on a bike of some sort, but we couldn't make any sense of it. Our intel NCOIC thought that maybe he jury-rigged a quadcopter, but it looked like a motorcycle. Our intel actually submitted the footage to the higher intel as an incident report. But yeah, this farmer was flying over his goats on a machine, and it didn't make any sense. We don't have any. Our sniper pods don't have any visual or parallax errors that would produce that. The likelihood that a Bedouin is living that type of equipment isn't realistic either. So we got the response back from the intel shop was that they just didn't know what it was.
Well, so unexplained. That's a UFO. It was flying. It's unexplained.
There's the Tony Stark of the Bedouin farmers is out there, and we just don't even know it.
And we have no idea. That's their version of Hocus Pocus over there. It's a Syrian farmer witch flying around over the goats. I don't know. Pretty crazy stuff. Well, I mean, I can't thank you enough for your time, especially with Halloween upon us. It's spooky season. Do you find around this time you get a lot more submissions and a lot more interest in the page? Like everyone's just kind of in the spirit, or like, no, throughout the year, it's pretty steady.
Actually, believe it or not, it's pretty steady. It comes in waves.
Yeah.
If we can, I would like to share one more story. And this is
Absolutely.
probably one of my scariest ones. I just want to kind of give your audience and let you guys know I collect a broad range of stuff. And
Yeah,
time shows up
awesome.
cryptids. I get a ton of UFOs. It's probably the most ones I get. But this one is kind of the early one we mentioned, and then we dived into it. We go down the rabbit holes with this a lot.
Yeah.
But I'll read the story. So this one is from a Marine who was stationed at Quantico.
Mhm.
And this is like, as I said, you can hear this on Tony Merkel's The Confessionals, and it's pretty creepy regardless. So I'll start it with this. I might not have a super fucked up story, but it's a pretty creepy one if you'll take it. I'm a military policeman at Quantico, and there's definitely been a couple fucked up things I've seen on the nights patrolling the west side. So I've been at Quantico for the last 2 years at MP, and for those that don't know, Quantico, it's set up on two sides. The main side where everything is, east of the 95, and they're appropriately named West Side, where they do TBS and all the ranges. Now, the West Side is pretty damn massive. Like, I'm talking like it takes a 2 to 3 hour drive to get all around it with all these forgotten off-roads and old cemeteries and homesteads dotting the landscape. There's plenty of forgotten training areas dating back to World War II. When I was on night shift, I would always be asked to be the roving unit out there because I would like to give me a chance to scout out the places to hunt or fish on my off days. And being the only unit out there and being left alone was pretty nice to skate or just do my own thing for a 10-hour shift. Now, I'm not a stranger to the woods or the outdoors or anything. I grew up running all around these mountains for quail and deer in Southern California as a kid and spent a ton of nights out camping by myself in my teens. There's not really much out there that freaks me out. One night about November, when the night was getting dark real fast, I was done posting Marines out to the gate and I was heading up to the far training area. I had my tree stand and my camera to go take a look around and to see if there had been anything around there. To get there, you have to drive about 30 minutes up one road and then 15 minutes until you hit a long dirt road that dissects part of the base in half. And in this particular area, your comms always suck, so you're pretty much out there on your own. I parked my Durango on the offshoot and I grabbed my flashlight and started to head down this creek bottom about a mile or so off the road. I've done this a ton of times, so I got there pretty fast. Grabbed my chip out of my trail cam and hopped up in my stand to take a look and pass some time. Not even 5 minutes into flipping through some turkey that were hanging around, I hear something human walk through the woods. Human as in on 2 feet, about 30 yards in front of me. Now, this is like in the middle of the night on the training base, so a lost LT doing night land nav is not out of the question. I thought I'd get a chance to mess with him or her, so I closed my laptop and turned off my flashlight and tried to see where they were. I hear it walk closer and closer and stop about 20 yards in front of me, and I could make out the outline of what looked like a deer, which was kind of disappointing. So I stayed to watch and see where he was headed so I wouldn't spook him. All of a sudden, it starts bashing its head against the tree over and over and over until its entire skull cap was crushed and leaking blood and brain matter. Then this thing fucking stood up on its hind legs, turned towards me, as though it was staring directly at me, even with its eyes being useless. It said in the clearest tone I have heard in my entire life, "I know you're there." My fucking stomach hit the floor. I was too frozen in fear to even draw my pistol. As quickly as it walked in, it got back on all fours and walked away. I waited about 10 minutes of shaking like a damn leaf before I hauled my ass out of there, got back to my patrol car, grabbed my shotgun, and sat in the lit parking lot of the MCX the rest of the night. It took me about a month before I had the balls to go back there and grab my laptop and shit from there.
Oh shit!
I went with a friend who didn't tell me I didn't tell what happened, but I told him to bring his long gun as well. When we got there, I grabbed my stuff and I walked towards where I thought it was at. And the tree was busted with splinters everywhere and what looked like blood and bones scattered on the ground. Needless to say, I don't go out checking stuff in the middle of the night anymore, and I hunt on the complete opposite side of the base. Anytime I go to where I always take a shotgun in condition 1 now. I told my Navajo grandpa about it, and he just told me not to speak about it, and it freaked me the fuck out when he said that. I don't get creeped out easily, I think. the shit fucked me up, dude. Like, I didn't even go out in the woods anymore after that. If you go on that podcast and you hear him like talk about the afterwards, and like you can hear how freaked out this guy was. And
Are you sure the higher command of MPs didn't make up that story to keep us from skating when we're we're out in the boonies in our squad cars?
I started thinking about that too. Could there be all these ghost stories on bases that were propagating?
You know, if you fall asleep on post, the butt poke ghost comes, and
oh, you guys caught me. This is all a psyop, so no one will ever want to invade the United States.
Yeah, whose side are you on, Nick? What the hell? What's going on here? Yeah, if you don't wear your glow belt when you're running on base, the fog ghost will get you. Yeah, interesting. Tales from the Gridsquare. I was riveted by each of these stories. Spooky season is upon us. Give them a follow at Tales from the Gridsquare. He's got an online store too with stickers and everything. You can hear him on other podcasts. Over 60,000 veterans and just civilians. Everybody's following it, sharing their own stories on that page. I think it's really cool what you've created there, and that you keep it anonymous.
I do. Yeah. Yes, I do. And I want to mention, I also have a book. I'm working on a second one. I have a volume 1 of 240 stories from the page that's available on Amazon. And it's just simply titled Tales from the Gridsquare Volume 1 on the Kindle store. And you can buy it to read on your phone out in the field, or pack the physical copy. But I'm working on a volume 2. It's going to be even bigger and better than the next one, hopefully out around May of next year. Slowly but surely, as I find the time between my regular Army job.
Yeah, you're doing a lot right now. Good initiative, spooky judgment, Nick. I think you're doing a great job. I think it's very cool what you're doing, and that you're giving other troops a place to go where they don't feel nuts, where they can be like, yes, I know I was tired on duty, but I swear to God, I saw this thing. Like, it's great to have an outlet for that too. So, Nick, thanks for everything. Go follow Tales from the Gridsquare, everybody, and check out his book.
Can I just say something about ghosts?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I do feel bad for people who say they've seen things, because I'm sure there are people that make things up completely, but there are definitely people that genuinely saw something, and maybe there's an explanation for it, but they're not making it up in their head that they actually saw something. But then they're
like that guy that we interviewed, Kate, the alien guy. Remember, that said he got abducted? Do you remember we interviewed him on the Chaps and Kate show?
Yes. And the thing about that threw me off, he had believed he had been abducted by aliens, was that so many other people in this rural towns where they didn't have cell phones yet all had the same experience. And
I think it was in West Virginia, right?
And it's like, you know how the cops will keep people apart and see what their stories are before they can talk? That was what happened in this case. Like, people went in to interview them, and these people who hadn't talked could corroborate their stories, which is so I believe they all saw something. What? I don't know. But like, the interesting thing, like Tales from the Gridsquare, you scroll through his Instagram posts and the stories, and he'll post about this ghost in Fallujah, and people will be commenting underneath from different units being like, holy shit, I know exactly what this person is talking about. Like,
that's what I'm talking about.
So it's like,
and it's like, you saw something fly across the sky, and you think it's an alien, you think it's something, when there might be a perfectly good explanation for what it actually was, but you have no idea what that explanation is.
Well, I said this several times during the interview too, so listeners are probably hearing this for like the 10th time, but being in the military, I think, lends itself to seeing really unusual shit, because it's 3 a.m, you haven't slept in 48 hours, you're sitting on a cold outpost alone, and you've had 15 Rippets and 2 gas station like rhino pills or something, and you're just ripping heaters, and you're full of nicotine. Like, you're delirious. I was so tired once.
You're doing whatever you can. You're taking those the instant coffee grounds and using them like dip.
Yes.
Like, you're doing whatever you can.
You're just so fucking out of it. And then you do have, at the same time, like, sometimes you're doing an op and there's another unit moving through the woods for some reason, doing some other shit. Like, there's loom rounds and there's this and that. Like, so it does lend itself to being like, wait, did I?
And the placebo effect too, right, Kate? Like, because if you're in there with like the other folks, and they start talking about it, they get you all gassed up. And they're like, did you hear that? And you're like, what?
Oh yeah.
No, I didn't hear it.
Oh yeah.
Is it a Babadook? I don't know.
Oh, dude, I used to babysit these twins in my neighborhood when I was, in hindsight, I was like 13 or 14 babysitting twins, like, kind of. But they would always
what's
be
the right age to babysit? Sorry, I just don't remember. I did it a handful of times growing up, but like, what's an age where you're like, all right, you can be responsible for another child?
I think it depends on the kid and if they're close enough to you. But they would always say towards the end of the night, did you hear that? did you hear that upstairs? They would always say they heard shit. And I'd be like, ah, and I'd go call my dad on the rotary phone, like, you gotta come up the street. But yes, you're right. Like all it takes is one person saying something and someone else to be like, oh, okay, maybe I heard it too. And like, everyone's freaking out. So I do think the military lends itself to ghosts.
Yeah, and in our defense, in the military, we're often in places that are not inhabited by a lot of people. We're out in the middle of nowhere a lot of times, so it's very plausible that you're just hearing things out of nowhere.
There's a lot of burial grounds on bases too, a lot of cemeteries.
I mean, he talked about one of the bases is right in the middle of where the Trail of Tears was brought through and the horrific things that happened there. And so you're out in the woods late at night and, so it's just really interesting. Thanks to Nick for coming on the show. Just spooky stuff, man. Spooky.
Spooky, spooky, spooky. Today's Save Rounds and Alibis is brought to you by our good friends at CrossCountry Mortgage. You have to live somewhere, might as well own it. Unless you are more interested in paying someone else's mortgage, it's a good time to buy when you are ready to buy. CCM listens, understands, and communicates throughout the entire loan process. They provide more loan options tailored to your financial capabilities than damn near anybody else on the market. It's innovative technology at focus on what's important to fulfill your loan needs. Everybody's finances is different. Everybody's situation is different. CCM is going to work with you to get faster closing times than the competition. They have stable monthly payments and low to no down payments as well. They have access to your equity to use for larger expenses from debt consolidation to home renovations. And who doesn't like a little bit of swag? Because if you sign up right now, you're going to get a free Barstool and CrossCountry Mortgage sweatshirt when you sign up to refinance or get pre-approval. Of course, that's while supplies last. See if you qualify today. Visit ccm.com/Barstool now. CrossCountry Mortgage, LLC, NMLS 3029. All loans are subject to underwriting approval. www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. Let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. There's a bunch of stories that came out that I want to talk about this week. But Nick, we'll go ahead and start with you, pal.
Yeah, save round for me. I actually just went to a Halloween parade for my daughter earlier. She was Minnie Mouse. Lots of tears. Lots of kids didn't want to be there, but happy to say Gia was pleased to be there to show off her ears. And but now we got costume number 2 on. I think everyone's going on Monday. So costume number 2 is going to be a witch, and I have to be a knight. Yeah, so
2 costumes. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm full blown in the spirit right now. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube.
Love it.
And if you're listening on audio, you'll never be able to see me as a Babadook, and you want to do that.
It's difficult hearing
this visual.
When you start talking about serious things, like when you get into a little thing, I'm like, can't say. It's like when you're drunk at a party and you've got like 15 beer caps stuck to your forehead, and I'm telling you my life
that's
story.
why I didn't put any actual topics.
That's what I was gonna say.
I wanted to talk about, but like if I was talking about Russia, Ukraine right now, it'd be pretty fucked up.
Yes, I agree. We can't. You gotta commit.
Kate, what do you got?
I got. Wow, my lips really went for it there. I got what? Nothing. I guess I got nothing. Come to think of it.
Okay, what's Cash going to be for Halloween?
He's going to be a shark. We too have a parade in town. It's a contest. It starts at 9:30 in the morning in town. It goes all the way across the town. It ends at the park. He's a shark. He loves sharks. So I thought, because I wanted to get something that he would actually get into the costume of and not reject. I've been keeping him around the costume all week. He fucking hates it. He won't get into it.
You should have went with the washing machine.
I should have. He loves the washing machine more than anything, so that's what I should have done. And I was going to decorate the wagon like the ocean, have all this stuff, and so now I don't know. I was going to dress up like a sailor. Okay.
What can you think you can get like a tropic? What was the team that Will Ferrell was on in the basketball movie?
Wasn't it the Flint Tropics?
Yeah, the Flint Tropics. Like, because of his curly hair, he could be the Flint Tropics guy so easily.
I was going to split it in the middle and make him be Mugatu. I was going to do that too, and I would be Zoolander or something like that. So yeah, I might have to do a last minute switch up of that costume. Also,
those are probably so fun to do. A mother child or father
Friday
child.
night live stream of the first game of the World Series between the Phillies and the Astros, and that will be here, so you can watch live. It'll be on Barstool Sports. Then Saturday after the Halloween parade, I'm heading down to the city. Me and a bunch of my cousins are going out in the town to watch the Phillies game together in Philly. And then the next day, we're going to the Eagles-Steelers game. And my cousins are younger than me, and they're all week long, the group chat, they're being like, let's fucking go. They're like getting real hyped up. And I'm like, well, I've got the Ragamuffin Parade at 9:30 and then but I'm really excited for, you know how I get when I get my mom's night out? I'm already getting pumped for it.
This is sounding more like it's going to be a mom's weekend bender.
Say
That's
what
how
you
it's
will.
shaping up.
I'll be bringing my
just
whistle
gotta
pig.
say it's a bad weekend to be a meatball hoagie with horseradish from Wall.
That is absolutely true. I'm going to be crushing all my dirtbag foods that I love. It's Schwarberfest.
There's a lot going on.
Discounted hoagies right now at Wawa. Thanks to Barstool Philly, by the way. No big deal. So I'm just really looking
who's going to
forward
be
the
on that
weekend.
stream with you?
All the Philly guys in Tico, Texas. Megan Making Money is being flown up for it to be on Tico's side, and Frank the Tank is also on Tico's side now, apparently.
And I said I didn't care.
And Chaps doesn't care. So there's that. But I'm just really looking forward to the weekend, fun sports weekend. And I fucking love Halloween. I was texting my cousins. I'm like, what are we going to wear out in Philly on Friday or on Saturday night? And they're like, absolutely not. No. So, whatever.
I haven't really gotten into Halloween in a handful of years. I suspect maybe it'll come back around, but I don't know. It hasn't been a thing for the last few years for whatever reason. So I'm excited for you, is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, one thing you guys talked about that I just wanted to discuss, not really discuss, but just make it a point. When you were talking about the generals going and getting employed by these other countries that employ terrorists, I just want to say, like, no, that's not good. I don't support that. But what do you think about people, and not just the generals, but just people in general who retire, enlisted officers, and are able to parlay that into, nice paying jobs? Are we okay with that?
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I think that's your skill set.
Right.
Like doing that. And I even understand it. I don't like it. Like Secretary Austin, for example, was on the board of Halliburton, and Mattis has been on some of those boards too. I think that's a terrible look for the military-industrial complex, but everybody knows that that's a thing. Like
Right.
everybody
Right.
knows it, and I think that has to be a congressional law, and they need to stop giving those waivers. I think that's the big deal. Like Secretary Austin got one, Secretary Mattis got one because they were still in that industry. I think you need to have a break where you can't walk out from that and then go straight into it. If it's 6 months, it's for the year, whatever. But I feel like there needs to be some time separation.
Yeah, like a garden leave type thing. I agree with that. I think that would be okay, so you can have that direct influence. But I just, anyone who served 20 or even 30 plus years and given back to this country, I have no problem with them getting then, a nice paying job on top of their
Oh, yeah.
retirement.
Shit, I parlayed
course.
that into this job.
Exactly.
I can't fucking
Yeah.
hate.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be ridiculous.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Yeah, I had one other thing, but I think it goes along with something that you're going to talk about, so I'll save that.
Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was shout out to my guy, the world's dirtiest man, Amuhai, who last week died after taking a shower for the first time in 65 years. He was known as the dirtiest man in the world, and he believed soap and water would make him sick. It turns out he was finally convinced to take a shower after 65 years and died less than a month later. So, man. But now the new dirtiest man, this record is going to be a lot like Emmitt Smith's rushing record. This one is going to stick around for a while. This is like the fucking 56-game hitting streak. You're not breaking it. This one's sticking around. The next closest guy right now, 30 years. Buddy, that's rookie numbers. You got to pump
those
them
up.
things up.
And a lot of you are dirty. I've been seeing this TikTok going around where this girl was like, did you know that a lot of guys don't realize they have to open their ass cheeks and really soap and water their assholes and their ass cheeks, and they just let the water run down it? And I was like, no, most guys know to like open their ass cheeks and wash their actual asses. And then this TikTok got stitched by thousands of other women holding the phones like secretly as they ask their boyfriends and husbands, like, hey, how do you wash your butt? And all of them saying, oh, I just let the water run down there. I don't need to do anything. What? None of you?
Annalise was trying to do that to me, try to get me secretly, but I knew it because of the TikTok thing. She was like, hey, do you like spread your butt cheeks to get in there? And I was like, no, I don't believe in
Shut
I don't
up.
soap my dick. Why would I do that?
You wash your butts. I know you both wash your
Of course,
butts.
but I told her that I didn't.
He was
'cause
playing
she
into
thought
it.
It was going to be on there.
He
right.
was
Okay.
playing into it because he knew what she was doing. But yes,
well,
I
there's
do.
a lot of men
One
with
thing,
unwashed ass out there, and it's troublesome.
you know what
You're
I think
not
is
getting,
very
I'll
prevalent.
say it. Nobody wants to be
We're
down
not going to
there.
act like every flap in the world is clean either, Kate.
Yeah.
But it is.
No.
Okay. Fine tooth
Listen.
comb. I go down there.
One thing that I do not think is unique to either or any gender. I think a lot of people don't wash their legs, like below the waist. They're just like, oh, the water runs down. Like,
Well, I don't
that
poop
mostly
out of my
gets it.
legs, Cons.
Yes, that is
Knock on
true,
wood.
Catherine. Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because that's the only way legs can get dirty is if you poop from them.
Poop on them.
Okay.
Well, I
yes,
wear
okay,
pants
got it.
all day.
Good
So all
point.
right,
say
but
it.
you
That's
wear wait
exactly-
time out. By that logic, you wear clothes all day too. Like does
I
that
don't
mean
wash
you're-
my legs. I don't. I
Okay.
never
So
will.
that you can't judge about buttholes.
Yeah.
It's very different.
What if somebody like me uses a bidet? That thing is sparkling all the time.
Well, then you're fine. But the rest of you guys, wash your asses before
my
this
spokes
weekend.
look like I've been hanging out with Birdman, where it's 20-inch rims on my spokes.
So I'm sorry, but so this was one of my saved rounds because it was like going around Twitter today. I guess John was talking about it on KFC Radio, and I was kind of curious. Are you bar soap or body wash people?
Bar of soap.
I recently switched it up. I got this little exfoliating bag. I put the bar of soap in that, so it exfoliates and soaks at the same
Oh,
time.
Wow, I
that's
kind of want to
smart.
see that.
I like
I'm
that.
Yeah, I'll
picturing-
show you
Yeah, I
guys,
want to
yeah.
see that. Yeah, no,
I'll do a period of instruction. Yeah.
okay, cool.
like
I'm a
that.
body wash with a loofah, but I think I might switch over to one of those like silicone pads. I think our pals at Manscaped actually offer one, so maybe I'll switch over. But I'm a body wash guy. Nick?
I use body wash. I think also like we're not talking about the people that like that if you use a bar of soap, some people's skin does not respond well to that. So that's one thing, but also like it's not
My
the
Nana
fact.
had to use Dove for that reason. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I don't. I
A
don't.
lot
think
of
it's
nanas using Dove.
I don't think it's the. I don't think the body wash is as much the problem. If you're not changing the loofah
Yes,
very
that's the
consistently,
problem.
you're a dirtbag.
Yeah.
Because you're throwing that thing on either the floor or you're hanging it up and it's like attached to the wall. Like that is what you need to be changing.
Yeah.
It's not the body wash. Like, I mean, are we really going to get into like what's in body wash at that point? I think it's a little bit dramatic. It's the loofah. If you're not
So
changing
you're
the
a-
loofah,
so you're
it's
a-
dirty.
Ugh.
Yeah,
You're a loofah guy.
I just saw Cons getting attacked online, and I just think it was completely, overblown.
Well, you're wrong.
I understand that completely, Nick. You're exactly right. The other one I'll save for Monday. We can talk about that more at length because I don't want to do that right now. So we'll do that Monday. Other than that, everybody have a great Halloween with your kids or with your friends or whatever you want to do. Have a great time. Last thing before we go, if you want to go to the Barstool Invitational, the basketball tournament that's going to be happening in Philly, and you don't have tickets yet, if you're a listener of this show, we will give you tickets for freezies. Just hit us up in the DMs or email us or something like that. We'll put them we'll put them somewhere where you can pick them up because we want military and veterans. If you have a huge group of friends, 20, 30 friends that want to go,
Let us know.
Doesn't matter. If you're military related, we want to get you in for free. Hit us up. We're going to do that. We have tons of tickets that were allotted to us for this reason. So if you have a group, a platoon, a company, anybody wants to come, hit us up. They're able to. Sound the retreat.